Hello, welcome back to Emmy Law's YouTube channel, your go-to source for valuable insights on legal matters. I'm your host and principal lawyer and founder of Emmy Law, and today we have a special guest, Michael Roy. Michael's a real estate agent for Sutton Group, and Michael, I've known him since 2019. And in fact, I met Michael when I had just gone out on my own. I think it was a few weeks after I'd gone out on my own in the summertime. It was June 2019. I was, browsing websites, trying to network, and it was through a meetup.
Yes, that's right.
And since then, me and Michael have been great friends. We work together a lot on different things. For example, when I started out on my own, I really wanted to understand the legal contracts that are involved with closing, purchases and sale, and so forth. And Michael actually gave me my first couple clients in the solicitor side. Although I do know the solicitor side, I don't practice the solicitor side, but it has greatly helped me in my litigation practice. So thanks to you, Michael. So Michael, 2019.
That's right.
Remember? What were you doing then? Were you a brand new real estate agent, or what were you doing at that time?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on the show today. 2019, that's about 5 years ago. So I started full time in real estate. And then that's how we originally ended up meeting, right? So, and ever since then, I haven't looked back. So
Very, very cool. And so you do a lot of cool things. So one of the greatest things that I like about your work is that you showcase a lot of businesses in Toronto. I've never seen a real estate agent or anybody, let's say, whether it be financial planners, real estate agents, advisors, anybody really go out there and let people get to know different businesses in Toronto. So tell us a little bit more how you came up with that idea, and what was your purpose for doing something like that?
I think my biggest motivation towards supporting local business is, I think, even before COVID, but even like in the middle of COVID, there was a lot of problems with small businesses and any business kind of surviving. And I was thinking, what can I do to kind of give back to the community? And that is one thing that struck me, is all the small businesses that need help. More so than all the big box stores out there. So even myself, I try to go shop local because I want to support the local community and the small business over than just going to the big box store, such as, Snappers Fish Market in Bloor West Village. I'd rather go and get my fish from them than going to a larger facility. Or instead of going shopping in Bloor West Village, instead of going to Costco, then I would go shopping for direct fresh fruits and vegetables in Bloor West Village. So that's the motivation, is just kind of keeping our community alive and just giving back to our community.
Wow, I think that's great, because I'm a big fan of that kind of philosophy, Michael. I tend to, and I think it's so important that we support small businesses. Like, even if the business has been around for a long time and it gets big, it still has that roots, that I go back to saying it has the roots where it goes back to what it genuinely, its purpose, right?
Right.
And I think it's great. So I practice in litigation, and I've seen a lot of, I'm dealing with a lot of individuals in our community who have issues with closing. So they can't close. They can't close resale homes. They can't close pre-construction, because they just don't have the money. Now, and as you know, the market isn't doing that great. So because you're in that market, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the market, and where do you think it's heading? I know you're not a big economics person, but you're in the market. You've been in it for a while. Can you tell us what's going on?
Right. I think looking in the past, when the interest rates were so low in particular, I think people bought homes at a lower interest rate. And what they're finding now is that now, a year and a half later, 2 years later, they're trying to renew their mortgage at a higher amount. So, and that's the issue with having the higher interest rate. And then currently now, a pre-approval is very important. So if you don't have that full approval or have that financing condition to protect you from being able to continue with the process of closing the deal, then you're going to run into an issue at the end. And that's one issue that we do run into, is not being able to close a deal due to finances, right? So the mortgage company is declining the application at the end.
Yeah, Michael, I do agree with you. The finance clauses are very, very important. I'm going to be frank and honest with you. The majority of my calls from, potential clients and existing clients, are the fact that they didn't have enough money, the fact that they didn't have a finance clause. And, we like to kind of say that the seller is the one that sometimes controls how the contract is being drawn up. Because at the end of the day, the seller could be the one to say, well, I'm not going to accept the finance clause if I'm going to accept your offer. So there's really something, you have to give and take. And I get it. You need to, I take it you basically explain to the client what the repercussions are if they don't put a finance clause
That's
in their
correct.
contract.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So what are other things that your clients or your potential clients come to you as being another pressing issue in their contracts, or what they want to know more about in their contracts?
Right. Particularly for first-time buyers, I think that they need to be educated on the process when buying a condominium, for instance, because a lot of first-time buyers are buying a condominium. And one thing that does come up is, what could be an issue with a condominium? And even myself, and we used to have these conversations, and you used to check status certificates. And the status certificate for the condominium will review financials, reserve fund of the building, if there was any lawsuits on the building, any liens or encumbrances on the building as well. So these are things that are really important to check. That's actually the number one thing to check when buying a condominium in particular.
Okay. What about a resale home? Is there anything that you deal with, individuals who basically, want to put an inspection clause, want to put what about appliances, for example? Like, is there clauses that you could put into contracts that indicate that, after closing, appliances need to be good and working order, and if they are not, there needs to be some sort of holdback. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, have you ever encountered an issue where someone who's bought property have also bought the appliances, and it later turns out the appliances aren't in working order? So what is it that you would is there a way that you would approach that with your clients when drafting their contracts?
Right. So one way to mediate that issue is to have like a buyer visit, we call it, right? So before closing date, I always go in with my buyers, and we will do an overall visit. So which means we're going to be turning on all the appliances, making sure they're working in working order. We can also apply a clause as well that says all appliances must be in working order upon closing date. And we will take a walk around, check the water, so you make sure the water is running properly. But most importantly as well is to have an inspection clause. Now that will alleviate any other issues you might have in terms of running into those problems later. So let's rectify the problem now by having the inspection clause in there. That way he can check, he can do a geothermal test, so he can check for any moisture behind the walls. We can check the roof to see how long the roof is going to last, and so on, right? So actually the best protection is to have an inspection clause, if possible, on the home.
So that's great, Michael. You can't really predict what happens after the contract is signed and the deal's closed, right? I mean, for me as a lawyer who deals in this litigation area, I often ask so many questions of individuals who are coming to who say they have an issue in terms of, the contract they signed, in terms of the clauses, in terms of whether they were explained by the real estate agent, in terms of whether they got to view the property, and so forth, because I think it's so important as a lawyer who's going to potentially sue these people that are involved in this whole contract. I need to know that the person has a legitimate claim, right? So that's great that, you have that skill and that ability to say, like, inspection clauses are important, financial clauses are important. What do you do as an agent to protect yourself from any kind of issues that could come up in terms of litigation? What is it that you do as an agent?
I think myself, it's just, I mean, we are governed by by RICO, the Real Estate Council of Ontario, right? So we do have a governing body that has rules and regulations that we have to follow by. So, number one, we're following those rules, right? And number two, it's just having the experience to work with any kind of buyer or seller. I think that it's important to run through all the steps, which means protecting them the best we can. We have a code of ethics we must follow as well, right? So all these things combined make for a successful transaction.
Okay, that's great. So, code of ethics, you have rules you have to comply with by RICO, and then I take it you also, explain everything to the client, and you basically sign off on, have their sign off. Have you dealt with situations where you actually had to remove yourself from assisting a client in a closing?
I personally have not dealt with that situation.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. Um, so any last words, Michael? Where can people reach you if they'd like to know more about you?
Right. So, I mean, I live and work in High Park, sell a lot of homes and condominiums there in High Park, but I do work across the GTA. And I think one thing about myself and my service is that, is some integrity involved, and there's a work ethic involved that I provide, which gives me that high level of service to give customers, right? And I think that it's important not just to work the sale, but after the sale, I'm always there for any follow up questions, which is the post service that I offer as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I could just tell you a little bit about my working with Michael. Michael's a great real estate agent because if he has a question about a contract, he doesn't sit on that question. And if it's a question that he knows is wrong in his gut and he's unsure about, he will call me as a litigator. He does deal with other solicitors. He does refer clients to solicitors to deal with the paperwork. And, that's what I told Michael when I said to him, like, listen, I don't do solicitor work. But if he has a question regarding a specific thing, or his client does, about a contract they're about to enter into, or that they're already in the process of already in the contract, but they have an amount of time to close, he contacts me and asks me. And I think that that's great for Michael because at the end of the day, if he doesn't let it just go, he doesn't let his clients just sign the contracts and stick with it. Like he protects himself that way and he protects his clients' interest. And the clients they don't end up retaining me at the end of the road because they've cleared that issue in the beginning. So I think that that's one of the great things I like about Michael, and that's why he's on my show. So we'll have his information at the bottom. We're glad that you were here today, Michael. You provided our, viewers with some insight, and thank you guys for joining us. We'll look forward to having our next guest on the video. Take care.